But this next poem I'm going to read, this is all true. This all comes from my life, and it's more on the heavy side, so I wanted to warn you about that ahead of time. It's called Great Grandfather. My great-grandfather was born beside the harsh cement of New Jersey in 1916. His adolescence was defined by the Depression, not the angsty teenage depression of my generation, but the real one, the great one. All my life, I've seen him defy his age for as long as he can. He climbed onto his roof to fix his air conditioner into his 80s. He's a tall, slender man who now, at age 97, moves in deliberate, meticulous steps. Most of his physical abilities have left him, but his memory still survives. His wife died about 20 years ago when I was still a baby. I don't know much about her, but you can sense her significance in my great-grandfather's home, feeling the weight of the space that's not being occupied. Whenever I visited that house as a kid, and even now as an adult, I've always struggled to make conversation with him. His near 100 years of existence were spent in a time and in a way that I don't know how to relate to. When we talk, I usually stick to safe topics like baseball and what our town was like decades ago. 6 years ago, his daughter, my grandmother, died following a surgery she never woke up from. My great-grandfather isn't one to put his emotions on display, but when my dad told him the news, you could see the gravity of his pain, the loss of his child, in his tired, weathered face. My dad's own father left him when he was a kid, so my great-grandfather had always filled that role for him. My dad would drive up to his house and visit him every week, talking with him in his thickly carpeted sitting room. I went with my dad sometimes, but I never had much to say. I remember overhearing my dad talking to some friends one evening. They had asked about my great-grandfather, and they marveled that he was still with us, that he was still living alone in the same old house. And my dad and his friends all said, in agreement, he's going to outlive all of us. Then, 3 years ago, my dad died of a cancer that sped through him with brutal efficiency. I flew home frantically, but not quick enough to see him before he died. When I arrived home, I embraced my crying mother and greeted the group of friends and loved ones who were there to console. Then my mom said, "You should go talk to your great-grandfather." She pointed to the patio where he was sitting, alone, removing himself from the crying and consolation. I stepped outside and saw him sitting, hunched and broken, in a wrought iron lawn chair painted bright yellow. We sat together in silence for a while. Eventually he said, "You're going to have to grow up faster now," and I nodded. I knew I should say something to him, but I had no idea what. After all, what could I possibly have of value to say to him? A man who grew up in a time I can't fathom? A man who worked harder than I ever have? A man who had watched helplessly as his loved ones died around him, his wife, his daughter, and the grandson he treated like his own child, leaving him stranded in a world of isolation, a world he had outgrown. And as I silently watched him sit there, quiet and defeated, a thought occurred to me. And though I didn't tell it to him, that thought wouldn't leave my mind. And that thought was, anyone can tell you about the tragedy of dying too soon, but no one ever speaks of the tragedy of living too long.